At the start of this year, Singapore entered an unusual situation. Pritam Sim stepped aside from the role of leader of the opposition, leaving the position vacant for the first time since it was formally created. Almost immediately, a familiar question resurfaced. Do we really need a leader of opposition in parliament? On the surface, the question seems reasonable. Singapore functioned for decades without such role. Parliament met, law were made, and the governance continued without disruption. But what does the position actually do? In Westminster parliaments, the role exists to anchor a parallel governing structure, the shadow cabinet. In the United Kingdom, the leader of the opposition appoints a full shadow cabinet that mirrors the government's ministers. These shadow ministers do not operate casually. They track bills line by line, follow decisions closely, and develop alternative policy positions that could be implemented if power changes hand. This is why the UK leaders of the opposition receive public funding, staff support, and formal recognition. These are not personal perks, they support a structural function. Another key difference lies in the agenda control. In the UK, the opposition controls a set number of opposition days. On those days, the opposition decides what parliament debates, regardless of whether the government agrees with the topic. This gives opposition institutional leverage. It allows scrutiny to be proactive rather than reactive. Now, compare that with Singapore. Singapore's leader of the opposition does not appoint shadow ministers. There's no formal shadow cabinet, no parallel policy team, and no guarantee policy research structure tied to opposition portfolios. Opposition MPs can and do question ministers, but scrutiny is fragmented and individual, not systematic. Agenda-setting power also differs fundamentally. In Singapore, the parliamentary agenda is determined by the leader of the House, a government appointment. The leader of the opposition has no power to introduce opposition-led debates or set parliamentary priorities. The role in Singapore comes with an office in the Parliament House, additional staff support, higher pay, and a priority in questioning during the sitting. But these features are largely symbolic, not structural. This leads to critical observation. The current leader of the opposition role in Singapore is more ceremonial than functional. It recognizes the presence of the opposition, but does not embed opposition as governing institution within parliament. This distinction matters because dominant party systems concentrate power by design. Without frequent checks, bills are examined from within their own framework. That does not mean laws are poorly written, but it does mean fewer incentives exist for systematic challenge, stress testing, and alternative policy reasoning. In Westminster systems like UK, Australia, and Canada, opposition is not treated merely as competition, it is treated as part of governance architecture. Australia and Canada both operate formal shadow cabinets. Opposition leaders receive public resources because scrutiny is understood as public good, not partisan indulgence. In Singapore, opposition remains largely reactive, responding to government initiatives rather than shaping parallel policy conversations. This is why debates about whether Singapore needs a leader of opposition often miss the deeper issue. The issue is whether Singapore intends to recognize opposition. A functional opposition does not weaken governance, it clarifies it. When ministers are questioned often, they have to explain their thinking clearly. When policies are examined in detail, problems that were not obvious at first can be spotted early. When there are different policy ideas on the table, laws become clearer and better tested. This matters even more in a dominant party system. In this setting, opposition MPs should not be seen as troublemakers, but as people doing the work of shadow policymakers. Competition in the parliament should not be treated as something dangerous. It should be seen as a way to keep power in check. Because in the end, the opposition is not fighting the country. The government is not fighting the people. Both sides are working within the same system for the same Singaporeans. So, the real question is no longer whether Singapore needs a leader of the opposition. The real question is whether Singapore one day wants a more complete Westminster system, one where opposition is not just present but properly empowered. And if Singapore ever chooses to move in that direction, one question becomes unavoidable. When do you think Singapore will be ready for its own shadow cabinet?